Hey everybody, this is sort of our 4th of July edition of Carnival of Randomness, as you can see by the picture of Greg being Uncle Sam there.
I want you.
At least
and you.
That's what all the bands say to him to be the drummer. But we were supposed to have Joe Beard on today, and I just want to wish him well. He's under the weather. We all are under the weather, but he's under the weather, not feeling well.
Yeah.
And, it's hot out and everything, so I thought we'd do a little bit... go down, a little bit of blues-related stuff. So we're down at the Crossroads today for this show.
Well, I did look up some stuff on him on Google. I did a quick search. I mean, he's 86.
Yeah.
Right? And he was born in, Mississippi? Somewhere?
Yeah, he was Ashland, Mississippi.
Oh, that phantom voice is Stevie T.
Hello, it's me again.
He actually he brought up with, I think he learned from Matt Guitar Murphy.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
they grew up together. They were the brothers, the Murphy brothers.
It was interesting. He said something. I looked at this. He was on some Channel 8 little interview thing, a couple minutes, and he said that he was listening to the blues stuff when he was growing up, and he wasn't nuts about it. B.B. King and all that kind of stuff. He wasn't doing anything for him. So his interests are more like Lightning Hopkins and all that really old Delta stuff, which is why he's such a good player.
Yeah. Yeah, he began playing guitar at about 17 years old before he moved to Chicago. I guess he
kind of
moved
late, really.
Yeah, and from Chicago he moved to Rochester. He actually started the Soul Brothers 6 with John Ellison, who just was inducted into the Rochester Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I've seen literally walk into clubs and just start playing.
Really?
Yeah.
One time Greg Townsend's playing in Abilene. John Ellison just walks in. Oh, can I play a couple songs? By all means.
Sure.
Yeah. He actually played with Sunhouse, who was a legend in the blues community. Sunhouse was living here in Rochester and lived a few doors down from Joe.
Yeah, he lived right near him.
Yeah, and they used to sit on the porch and play guitar. So Joe was really rubbed elbows with a lot of top-of-the-line blues people.
He gets to do this. I have to go home and listen to the horrible music my neighbors will be playing.
Well, I have that, too. We won't go into that. But eventually, Joe became an electrician here in the Rochester area. So he was an electrician by day, and he played guitar on the weekends. And he's still playing right through today. He's got a monthly gig down at M's Bar and Grill down at Seabreeze. So we pop in there every once in a while, and Joe's always a great guy, and the guys in the band are great too. They'll usually call you up if you're out in the audience. You might have the experience and the opportunity to play with Joe in the band. They're great guys, great band.
I think the thing about the blues too is people don't realize sometimes. It seems simple, but it's complex. And you go, like, for Robert Johnson, he would play with his back to the audience because he didn't want people to see how he played the songs.
Yeah.
Keith Richards, in his book, said he's going into chess. There's Muddy Waters painting the studio, and he's asking Muddy how to play some of these songs because he just can't do it.
Is that right?
And Muddy explained. I remember Muddy Waters with some stories I used to hear about the old Python Club here. Oh, and you would always see, like, Howlin' Wolf, good old Chester Burnett there, Herbert Sumlin, one of my favorite guitar players. He would give you a 3+ hour show. He'll be crawling on the ground, howling. So my brother goes to see Muddy Waters. He's like, the band's playing. It's like, Muddy's at the bar. He would come up after, like John Mayall did that when he played here, where they do the band plays like 4 songs and they introduce them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I got into the blues circle relatively late in my life, and I missed all the big names that were playing in the Rochester area back in the day. I grew up during the British invasion days of the 60s and 70s, so that was my focus. So I tried to, get out to see those guys when they'd come into the area, so that I missed a lot of the blues guys. Yeah. I remember going to the old Milestones one night, and Mitch Ryder was there. And he still had Johnny Bandachek on drums.
Johnny B.
Johnny B is original drummer. Of course, I'm a big fan.
Did his wheels come off?
No, they were still on, believe it or not.
I have a card from him because I ran into him. He gave me a business card.
Oh, did he? Mitch Ryder?
Johnny B.
Oh, Johnny B. Yeah, man. He just celebrated a birthday, and they're still living in Detroit with Jim McCarty, who was the original guitar player for
Cactus.
And Cactus. Yeah, he was with Jim McCarty was the original guitar player for Mitch Ryder. Then he went on with Cactus.
Wow.
So, and he's still playing. I tell you what, he's a very underrated guitarist. Jim McCarty is just an incredible monster on the guitar.
Isn't he still with Cactus or no?
No, he's left. He actually they just released a new album. It's kind of an all-star album. Carmine put a new lineup together, and he's got special guests on every song.
I have the Cactus 5. That's really good.
Cactus 5, that's got Jim McCarty on it.
Yeah.
It's also got Timmy Bogert, who was the original bass player. Sadly, Timmy's passed away now.
But I love the version. What's the soul song the Temptation song they do on that? It's cool as hell.
I can't think of the name of that one.
Not Ball of Confusion. What's the other one there?
Oh, on Cactus 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Whatever. It's one of the classic Temptation songs, and they redo it.
Yeah.
And it's super good. If you're looking. I would just say, bands, if you're looking for a nice soul cover to do that's not super soul in its style, that would be one to do.
I think their live album, I have every song. Probably the one of the least running songs is 8 minutes.
Yeah, they stretched them out, man. They twisted them and stretched them out. Fortunately, about a little over a week ago, Carmine's back out on tour with a new lineup of Cactus while we're talking about Cactus, and they played down at Fanatics in Lima, New York.
I wish I knew about that, too. I'm so bummed out.
Just tore it up, man. Just tore it up. Carmine, he's always been an idol of mine. I just admire his playing abilities, his style. I saw him with Vanilla Fudge in the early days. I saw him with Cactus a couple times. I saw Jeff Bogert in a piece at RIT. I saw him with Rod Stewart. He was playing, I think 6 years he was playing drums for Rod Stewart.
So you kind of like him.
I kind of like him.
I have to laugh at that reference because this book, Carmine's book, Rod does the intro.
Does he?
And he goes,
I still haven't read it yet.
Oh, wash your hands afterwards. It was the day. It was the day of the good old Rod.
That's a book I still have to pick up to read.
He goes, Rod does the intro, and he goes, well, I ended up firing him, but he's still a great guy.
That was an odd pairing, if you ask me. That really was.
Because it was like sort of that where Rod was more like now poppy, disco-ish and stuff.
Yeah, but how could he fire him after he co-wrote the biggest hit he had?
That's right. Carmine co-wrote Do You Think I'm Sexy with Rod, I believe. Yeah. So, anyway, great band, great players.
You know, it's funny how you talked about blues. Sometimes, I pull my references from so many different things. I learned about Leonard Cohen because they played the song in Pump Up the Volume. Mm-hmm. Kurt Vonnegut because of Back to School. And I really got into the blues because of the Blues Brothers.
Ah.
So you get it where you can. Because I tend to I'll just go down one path than another.
Okay.
But I think some people, we do stick to our genres. It's like British Invasion.
Yeah, I think so.
You get those groups of people where
people point out new bands that are up and coming, and I don't know, and I'm sure they're all good. They're recording artists in their own right, but I've got so many different artists that I'm already into. Like all the British Invasion bands, for instance, and the American bands, too, from that area. I call it the American Revolution bands because, you got everybody. We were talking about the Rascals before we went on the air. As a matter of fact, the current rendition of the Rascals will be in town in August with Gene Cornish. Gene's still with them, and, of course, Felix, who is pretty much the voice of the Rascals. Felix sang most of the songs with Eddie Brigatti. And so that's one of my favorite bands from the 60s is the Rascals.
I was going to ask you, we have how is it drumming blues songs?
How is it drumming blues songs?
You can make a lot of mistakes. Believe it or
seems
not.
like but it seems to me like okay, maybe a bad analogy, but reggae, where it seems simple, but probably screw up a lot.
Well, it's funny. I watched this one YouTube thing. It was I don't know who the drummer was. He was a blues and soul drummer, and he said one of the things he drives them nuts is when guys they hit the one on the hi-hat and leave it open. They think it's necessary to do that in a blues song, and he said that is like stupid and like the worst thing you can do. But it's hard because you have to really just lay it down. It's pretty much boom whack.
It's
boom
an
whack.
offbeat. Everything's kind of offbeat on reggae, pretty much, isn't
right,
it?
but I'm talking about blues.
Oh, you're talking about blues.
So, but I'm just saying, a lot of guys they try to overplay. they overplay blues. And they do that thing with where they hit the hi-hat on the one, and I guess this guy, that's a big pet peeve with him. But, you want to put the little fills in, and so a lot of times, if you listen to the old stomping blues stuff, you don't even hear a hi-hat or a cymbal. You just hear it's just a boom whack. That's it. I mean, that's Billy B.
A boom
Billy
whack.
B will tell you that, I mean, he likes it nice and stripped down and simple, and that's really the way it is.
I describe blues like that as the opposite of jazz. Like it's very contained.
Yeah,
it seems very contained.
It is.
It is. Yep.
And it's also about like I used the Simpsons quote about the blues. It's not to make you feel good; it's to make the rest of us feel bad.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about the blues, and I mentioned this once before on the show when I got hired to play with Ezra and the Storm. I've been playing mostly top 40 pop, disco, just pop stuff, a lot of vocal stuff, top 40 rock and roll, a little bit of each of that. And then I was out of the business for a while, and I got the bug to play again, and Ezra hired me, and I had to learn a whole new style, which was the blues rock stuff. It's a whole different feel. And I learned an awful lot about artists I knew nothing about in the past before I joined that band.
I think, too, we go full circle. You talk British invasion, all that. What were those guys influenced by? The blues.
Yeah.
Like the Stones basically came together. Because imagine now, I could order something, that let them talk, and I'll order something on my phone. But those days, if you got a record, you get Jimmy Page, all these guys would come together. And the story about the Stones is, Mick and Keith were casual acquaintances, but Mick had a blues album. They ran into each other on a bus. And Keith said, if he didn't let me go listen to it, I probably would have rocked for it.
Yeah.
But they went and listened to it, and that started it out.
Those guys were all listening to the American blues artists, the Animals. The Stones were a blues band in the beginning stages of the band.
That's what Brian Jones said. He didn't want them to go rock.
Yeah.
But I like one of the best quotes is I've always loved Herbert Sumlin, Howlin' Wolf's guitarist, when they had the Howlin' Wolf sessions in London. And they had everybody there, Clapton, Beck. And Clapton was going down there, and Clapton goes, they got someone, what do they need me for?
Yeah. I one band I failed to mention, too, for all these British blues bands were the Yardbirds. I mean, my God, that was a hell of a time to be growing up in England, was with the Stones, the Beatles, the Yardbirds, the Animals, on and on and on. It's like, oh, my God.
Have you ever wondered if they didn't come over here? I mean, if the British invasion, what do you think music would have been?
I don't know.
In American music.
It was all by accident. Do you realize the only reason this whole thing started was because Ed Sullivan was at the airport and saw the commotion with the Beatles were landing at whatever airport.
Yeah,
it was Ed Sullivan, just by an accident, had stumbled across the commotion at the airport, and he inquired about it. And those are the Beatles. They're from England. Oh, we got to get them on the show. Boom!
Right.
The whole thing exploded.
I guess, that's true. I remember that story. Yep.
It would go more maybe towards still more blues rock, hillbilly as they call it. It's more the 50s artists, so it would probably still go
right. Rockabilly
is great.
who Buddy Holly.
Right.
That was great stuff. It still is. There's bands that around town that are playing rockabilly. I love it myself.
And I think, though, it's amazing how the early days, though, like I read a Chuck Berry bio, and there was special kind of insanity in the 50s. They like banned Fats Domino because there were 4 riots at a show. Rioting at a Fats Domino show, the Stones, like I was reading in Bill Wyman's book, basically have a riot every night. They had one in Rochester when they played here.
The 50s.
I was at that show.
He called the squares.
The 50s was tough because it was the Eisenhower era and it was very right wing.
Well,
it was different, man.
The Man in the Gray Flannels. I mean, there was a underneath with
crime,
the
the whole
beatniks
bit.
and everything, all that sort of underneath stuff, the beats, all that kind of stuff. But it was also, the Man in the Gray Flannel suit,
right.
prim and proper, Father Knows Best, and everything.
Cops ruled then. They weren't hated like they are now. Okay, that's it for politics.
Yeah, that's it. But the Stones, when they played in Rochester, at the time it was the Rochester War Memorial, which is now the blue.
To me, I don't care.
I know, me too. I always catch myself saying the Rochester War Memorial, which is the Blue Cross Arena. Everybody knows that. But I was at that Stones concert, and I don't think they played more than 4 songs. And the kids, it was the Beatlemania thing. Everybody wanted to get close to the stage. I was down on the floor myself. I actually had a direct beeline view of Brian Jones. I could see him very clearly, and he was right in front of me almost. And the cops stopped the show in between songs. It was the police were the security back then. They used the police. Every city used the police department for security.
How did they play then? Was it Sting or Andy Summers?
How did they play?
Yeah, Sting or Andy Summers was security, or Stuart Copeland.
That one went over my head. I don't know.
You have to be swift to be on this show.
Yeah, man, you got me on
that one. You
are
certainly swift.
Yeah. Sorry, kids. So anyway, the cops stopped the show for a minute, told everybody to sit down, go back to your seats, and they didn't. Somebody threw a chair up on stage, and all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
And the police stopped the show, and that was the end of it. We got chased out of the War Memorial.
All right, youngsters,
and
settle down.
That's it. All you crazy kids.
Where was Adam West in his Batman outfit to go, citizens, good citizens?
You know what? Speaking of that, since we're random, I was just looking at a YouTube thing today. Some guy posted all these Batman-related commercials from the 60s where I was going to send it to you if you can look it up.
I have a couple of them.
And where he's telling kids to look both ways with the crosswalk. And then he's in England doing one in England. That was really cool.
You know what? I think it goes back, though, too. My good friend, the Kratzman, Todd Kratz, said that one time about music. It's a way to vent, a little out, like you have a busy day working, you put on some music. And think of how those kids, sometimes now it's way too lenient, crazy the other way now. But back then, you were all like, get your crew cut, dress all up. So these kids needed to blow off steam.
Yeah. Well, get your crew cut. I can tell you a quick story about that. So I used to get my hair cut. My father would take me. I think I was probably 11, 12 years old. Of course, we were, from the city of Rochester. So even though we moved to Arundecoit, we still had all the connections in the city. So my dad used to get his hair cut at Louie's Barbershop on Webster Avenue. So, of course, he would take me when it was time for him to get a haircut.
Man, you're Louie.
Yeah, Louie. So Louie would put me in the chair, and he'd he'd drape me with the towel and all of that and get me ready for a haircut. So he'd go, so, Stevie, how would you like your haircut today? And I'd look at him, I go, Dad, Louie, I said, I want a Beatle haircut today. And he'd look at my dad, and my dad would be shaking his head back and forth. No Beatle haircuts today. And I'd walk out with a brush cut. But-um-bump.
You know what? It's funny. You remember the Boys Town or Boys Club magazine? You remember that? Okay, so they had little cartoons in there, like little New Yorker type things in the back, and one of them was really funny and it stuck with me. There was a guy in a chair, and he had a crew cut, and the barber's looking at him, and the customer goes, "A Beatle haircut, please."
There's one guy, I love this phrase, there's a barber in Henrietta, Eddie Frazier Jr., and Eddie Frazier, what he'll do to you is like come in, goes, how do you want it, bald or extra bald? But I had the one, there was a guy.
Hair-raising stories on the turn.
There's a guy down Long Pond my dad went to, and he was stuck like in a break in case it's the 50s again. One of those guys with the buzz cut.
Yeah.
So he'd bring me in, And, you know, my dad, he'd look at me and look at my dad and go, see, you brought in your daughter again.
Oh, man.
Ouch.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The 50s and 60s, man, you could get away with saying all kinds of
Well, you know the whole truth about
stuff.
it, though? Go look at, like, old portraits or stuff. You'll see, like, everywhere, all these guys with hair down to their shoulders from, like, the 1800s. What started the crew cuts and stuff was World War I. You can have lice and everything.
Well, yeah, that was why. Yep.
Yeah.
That was
going from headlights to World War I to Jazz Fest because we were stuck.
I think head shaving was part of that too.
Yeah. But this is like we never really talked about much. Greg, have you gone to the Jazz Fest a lot in this?
Not this year. I didn't go at all.
You played. I remember. Right.
I played a couple times.
I remember Anonymous Willpower played in an alleyway one time.
Yep, by Eastman.
Yeah.
My cousin filmed that. It's on YouTube. You can see
I was there.
Yep. And.
My friend was drunk when I was with. He's like, they could be in an indie movie. I have to turn you around. They're this way.
Yeah. I mean, I did one with Frank the Blaze at Bernunzio's. I
love those Bernunzio shows.
And I did that other one with Anonymous Willpower, and that's about it for playing. And then I went a few times. I went to some of the free stuff, and when I worked downtown, it was a lot easier.
Say back like maybe 10 years ago, plus, I would take the whole week off, and I would be there in the hotel till like 7 in the morning. I would take some of the musicians to Jitsy's. Apologies. They got food poisoning. But I remember, like, for me, because there's an old story about that when I was in college.
Let me tell you,
They took Fisher Players there one time. Everybody got food poisoning.
Oh, God.
Let me tell you my food poison story.
Well, I got some great ones. We can do a whole show about that.
A whole show on food poisoning.
But for me, too, it's like some of the memorable. There's often some.
Bucket optional.
There's often some people get food poisoning if they listen to this show.
I've had it. It's not any fun.
No, I've had it more than once.
Yeah.
But for me, it goes back to there's some people I just go, I'm really glad I saw them. And one of the biggest one from Jazz Fest was Mose Allison.
Yep.
Okay.
That was
and
great.
we're supposed to be adults, right? I remember going, you couldn't get tickets ahead of time. So you had to go stand in line. So you stood in line, and it was at the arena by Auditorium, that little side arena, whatever it's called. They have, like, I've seen Daka Braka there. It's like the Eastman Theater thing. You go in there, there's a big line. They count.
Oh, that's the Kilbourne. You're talking about
Kilbourne
Kilbourne Hall.
You.
Sure.
I'm bad with names, as you can tell.
I am, too. What's my name? Ba-dum-bum.
Don't call me Shirley. So,
but I'm pumped already.
So they go and they're counting and they go, okay, 1, 2, 300. Okay, you made the cutoff.
Yeah.
Then I go down there, over 30 so-called adults stuck in line,
boom, boom,
and I barely made it.
I hate when they do that. Those adults, my God.
No, but they're not kids. They're like older. And I'm going,
well, of course.
Grow up.
Yeah, that's right. Come here.
But Mose Allison, the way he looked, he had a purple claw hammer on. He looked like a Kentucky Colonel's a purple claw hammer.
What the hell's a claw hammer?
It's like Groucho Marx. What Groucho Marx
was. Oh.
Those kind of like jackets, like they're called claw hammers.
Oh.
He has that, and he has like jeans and sneakers. He is, okay, let's put it this way. You could see he was getting a little, because, he hummed her. He would play the same song over and everything. But it was still, just seeing Mose Allison, he's like one of these guys who, for me, and then Booker T and the MGs.
Booker T, yeah.
And I worked at the corner when they had the Scotalites.
I saw them out on the street. They did a concert a few years ago. Is that the same one?
It was Booker at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe that long ago, yeah. They did, there was the 3 of the original 4. The drummers passed away. So,
but that was like with the Scotalites. I think there were 2, and they played a free show right by the corner, right on East and Alexander, because I was working, and I would just stand out and watch them.
Yeah, outside. That's the one.
And there were 2 of them. There were only 2 of them still from the Scotalites left.
Oh, the Scotalites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Booker T, I remember, I forget who, because it was Booker T, I don't know if it was Duck Dunn.
Duck was with them when they were here. I saw Duck Dunn, Steve Cropper, and what's the other guy's name? Booker T.
Yeah, Booker T. Jones was it?
Yes, Booker T. Jones. He's the guy. He's the keyboard player. And
they were selling green onions at the farm market.
Were they? They're good when they're green.
But has there been any memorable one? I mean, there's a lot of, and there was one band called Mezca. They were Cuban. And I just hit it off with these guys.
I saw Cowboy Mouth. They were interesting.
And the thing with them is because of Castro and because of the way things were, they couldn't come back here. So I would actually go to Toronto. I saw Aretha Franklin and them, and I went to Ottawa Jazz Fest to see them. And it's cool because it's like, you know, we're friends on Facebook. You don't see each other, but it's like seeing old friends. You know, you're all hugging and
I always hug my friends.
All that kind of stuff.
Usually.
You know, and it was always really fun seeing them. But it's one of those things where, you know, I had my moment at it, and now I just don't like going out or anything anymore.
I mean, I saw a lot of stuff at Montage, too, because I like that room. I forget who exactly. I did a couple of shows there.
I like the churches, actually. The church shows, there's like a band from Scotland.
Yeah, and all those bands from Scandinavia are very interesting. I used to go to a couple of those because they're just so out there. They're very conceptually different.
But I still remember, like, one of my last memories, I saw Michaela at Lincoln Hill Farms, and I'm going to go see the Surfer Jets at Abilene, right?
Oh.
It's like a show. So I park.
You know on some of those.
It's Jazz Fest, right? So I go park. I'm walking down. I walk by. There is a cloud I walk through. It's like the cloud monster in Star Trek, the vampire cloud. It's a pot. I am like so spaced by the time I get to Abilene for the Surfer Jets. Just to walk through a cloud of pot.
A cloud of pot.
There's like a cloud of pot sitting there, right?
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
No, it's like, fuck. You know, detonate the neutron thing and beam me up.
Who's got a bag of potato chips? I'm hungry.
Yeah.
But you were shuttling people around this year, weren't you?
This year, I fell into something again that I was very excited about. I was asked to drive one of the shuttles for the Jazz Fest this year. And I'll tell you what, I was obviously very, very nervous in the first couple of days because you're driving vehicles that are foreign to you. And
with a lot of people around, right?
And then, you know, you've got to take them from, let's say, pick them up from the airport. You got to be on time, get them back to the hotel and/or the venue, maybe for a sound check. So everything's timed out. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that people don't see or even think about. Really, they just, when's the show? And then, you know, you're going to the show. But the transportation department it does an incredible job of lining up not only the hotels for the artists, but the pickup and delivery of the artists, and it's constant. It's constant. Every day somebody's coming into Rochester and or leaving Rochester.
I know Cherry Falzone did a lot of that traveling around too, yeah.
And so, but you know, as the week wore on, I got a lot more comfortable. And I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, but it was tiring because it's even, you know, for the 3-4 hours you were there, there's a little bit of stress. As I said, you know, you've got to be on time, and it's hustle bustle.
I was going to ask you. So this is just a weird question. So what was the stupidest fan thing you ever said to an artist?
The stupidest fan.
Like, I really like your music, man.
Well, I usually prepare myself before I go to these things. No, I don't know. I can't think of something dumb I've said.
I mean, was there anybody that you were such a fan of you didn't know what to say?
Oh, yes. That's a good one. Now, I have, for the longest time, had the biggest crush on Rita Coolidge. I mean, she was and is still a doll. I just adore her. I think she's just extremely attractive. So she was playing at where the heck was it? Was it I think it was Kodak Theater on the Ridge, maybe it was called at the time. So I got there extra early. I brought my camera. I figured if I get there early, I'll bump into her.
Took a shower.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I even put some cologne on. So I even put my cleanest underwear on.
His other pair.
Well, I had to turn them inside out, but that's another story. So I got my camera, and I'm walking the halls in Kodak, right? And behind the scenes, it was in the afternoons. I figured I'd catch her during sound check, and I walk through this door into this long hallway, and as I'm walking down the hallway, the door at the other end of the hallway opens up, and here she comes. Here comes Rita Coolidge, and I totally froze. I mean, I really was like that. Hamina. She was probably with one of the other musicians in the band, so they're walking towards me. And they walked right by me. I go, hi, how are you? And they kept walking, and I kept walking. There was no picture. There was no discussion. And that was the beginning and the end of the whole thing. I was so disappointed in myself, who can probably wear out 2 rows of teeth when I need to. But I had nothing to say to her. I totally froze.
That's pretty funny.
Did you ever have one like that, Greg? Or most of the time they'll see you go, it's the drummer to the stars.
What, me saying something to somebody
No, you
else?
ever had like one awkward one like that?
Probably, but I can't recall at the moment. I mean, a lot of times, I like you. I have said something dumb like, well, I really like you guys. I mean, sometimes you just don't know what to say.
I had infamously, so I met Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze.
Oh, it's Glenn.
Great guy.
Is he?
So Chris Difford plays at Milestones. Unfortunately, the timing of the day, let's just say I pre-gamed a lot. So I'm sitting there watching the show at the bar. Chris comes up to me, going up. He sees I have a CD. He goes, would you like me to sign that? I'm like, you Squeeze!
It's interesting when they say, would you, and I've heard this before, would you like me to sign that? No, I'm just carrying it around because I got nothing else to put in my hand. Well, of course I want you to sign it.
Yeah, well, they're just trying to break the ice.
Because Tilbrook, I guess, like his manager said, he was worried about him because, like, if you asked him to hang out, and the thing I did was I told him there's a British bar called the Old Toad there.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. He goes, I got to do this. You tell me where it is. And he stopped in. And he's, like, very fan-friendly, where Difford's all posh. He comes off, he's got well-dressed, sort of, like, a little bit standoffish. So I'm doing, like, if I would have done that to Glenn Tilbrook, like, when he signed my album, he took he used the eyes on it. He used it to put his O's of his name on there.
Oh, that's cool.
Then I asked Chris Difford, I go, you think you'll ever do, like, Tilbrook and Difford again? No! So I feel like emailing him now because Squeeze got back together. Yeah. Hey,
you lied to me. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could remember that. I probably have embarrassed myself, but can't recall at the moment. But I will contemplate that for next time.
I have done that, like when Primetime Funk plays, because I'll throw underwear at the keyboardist. Because he's hot.
He is.
Yes.
That was one of my most cherished moments.
I hear an Andy.
He's got it framed on the wall.
But then, I hate to do it because I'm like not big. I guess I've grown up, but you get a little bit of ego, and there's the weird turnaround when some singers and musicians, and people are signing autographs. Then they see you and they go, "Oh, hi, Rob."
Yeah,
and then you go off the.
I find it easier to talk to these people if I'm actually on a bill with somebody. Like, I remember at Water Street once, we opened up for The Fix. We were playing with Earl.
I was there for that.
Earl Cram.
Did you stand or fall when he played?
And I think I did say something to one of the guys during sound check, or, hey, nice to be playing with you guys, or, something like that. I mean, then I just feel like it's professional chit-chat,
Yeah.
And to them, they're just on the road. They don't give a shit.
The normal guy like everybody else. And,
you know what you don't do, and this is what I've heard about Richie Blackmore? Richie hates people coming up to him, oh, you're great, you're awesome. But if you say something like, how did you play that solo? Or talk about guitar, talk about football. You might end up hanging out with them.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
I'll tell you who is great to carry on a conversation with is Lou Graham.
Yeah.
And,
he's a sweetheart, though.
Oh, he is. Absolutely.
Don Mancuso, too.
Don, I don't know, but...
Great guy.
We've
had him on the show. He's a sweetheart.
Yeah. So, you know what? Lou, he likes to talk about cars. He's a big car guy. I see him at the Classic Car Cruise nights, and rarely do we talk music. It's always about his cars or our cars, any of the cars that are out there at the show. So, he's great when it comes to that. But as far as the music, he's been doing it for so long. It's,
doesn't feel like the first
I played
time
a couple of
anymore.
those classic car shows. They're a lot of fun.
It's a good one.
No, I actually want, if I ever had somehow, by the grace of God, had him on here, I want to talk muscle cars.
Yeah.
And there's a great story Rob Mount told me where they're touring, right? Lou sees there's a car broken down. he stops the bus and he gets off to tinker with it.
Oh, did he?
And Rob's laughing, going, the guy didn't know it's like Lou Grant fixing his car.
Right.
I just feel bad for him because when I do see him at some of the cruise nights, as soon as he pulls in, gets out of his car, people, obviously they're going to gravitate over. Oh, it's Lou. And, give the guy some space. He's a normal guy like everybody else. He just happens to have a dozen hit albums under his belt.
Well, welcome to the podcast crew. We're like, we can't go for walks out here.
No, it's been tough.
I mean, people throw pie at us sometimes.
I was accosted just the other day. No.
I got somebody, I'm walking around Pittsburgh, and somebody goes, oh, you're Rob Schwartz, Carnival of Randomness.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up. Here's another silly story.
Well, that's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
So I went to see the Happy Together tour at the Kodak Theater on West Ridge Road.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
And there was a whole gang of us there, and we're in the lobby doing what we always do, take a picture together. Hey, come on, get in line over here, we'll take a picture. So we're standing next to the merchandise table, and the last guy coming out of the auditorium yells out to me. He goes, and when Gary Puckett was on the bill, he was in the show, and this guy Nick, this friend of mine, he says, hey, Gary. He's yelling at me. You were great on stage tonight. And everyone's head turned. Especially the people that were standing at the merchandise table right next to us, and they saw us gathering for a picture. So now everybody thinks I'm Gary Puckett. Okay, so here comes this guy.
He found the fountain of youth.
He got his phone out, and he's gingerly walking towards me, and he comes up to me and goes, "Excuse me," he goes, "Can I get your picture, please?" I said, "Guy," I said, "seriously, I'm not Gary Puckett." And his face dropped because he thought I really was, and I'm blowing him off.
Did he do like, you are Gary Puckett, your line?
No, his facial expressions, you had to be there, but he was like extremely disappointed that I wasn't.
Gary's actually a nice guy. I remember
Did you meet him?
Being on the road. I didn't play with him, but I was on a bill with him.
Okay.
I got that beat. It's
in
like,
Atlantic City.
The scene in Jaws with the scars, I got that beat. So I'm working at the corner, and there's a band plays, and we're cleaning up. They're sort of finishing up. They're from Cincinnati. The kid's looking at me. Like, he goes, I got to ask, are you him? I'm like, yeah, sure. He goes, guys, it's Kyle Gass from Tenacious D. And then I'm like, wow, I'm a rock star. Then I looked up what Kyle Gass looked like and go, oh, well.
Yeah.
I get, not that anybody thinks I am, but they all say, you look like Michael Keaton. And I'm like, okay, I guess. Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I fool the bank? Maybe. No, but I did. We played in Atlantic City, and we were playing in the lounge, and Gary Puckett was doing a show upstairs in the big hall. Yeah. And his guitar player got to be friends with me, and through him I met Gary. And Gary was talking to me just like a regular person.
Yeah. And
then we all went out to hear the Romantics at a bar in New Jersey. We just jumped in the car and off we went.
Love that band too, Romantics. Yeah. So this guy, he says, well, with this disappointed look on his face, he says, well, do you think I can get a picture with you anyway? I said, yeah, sure, bring it in. We took a picture together. Now, all the ladies there were at the merchandise table buying stuff, they're all grabbing their phones. They still think I'm Gary Puckett. So now I go, hold on, everyone. No, I'm not Gary Puckett. Thank you very much.
Wow, it really became a big thing.
It was. It really was that night. It was crazy.
But you know what you could do? Like if you did like a little prank out here, like we went by the canal now, and a couple of us come up to you and I'm like, can you sign this and do... There'd be a line.
You're going to carry Gary Puckett albums around with you now?
People would just be going, I don't know who it is, but it must be famous or something.
Well, yeah, no one wants to miss out.
Well, yeah, you know what? That's funny. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can even start a rumor or say something stupid. And
I say something stupid all the time.
People will buy it. Like, hey, I saw so-and-so. He's over at the mall.
The one weird one is my friend Steve Pizzuto. Actually, he did meet Eddie Van Halen at Loving Cup.
Wow.
He's got the pictures. It turned out, like he's there and he's like, is that Eddie Van Halen? I guess he was in town. He knew somebody that was there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess Eddie, he took a picture with them and everything. It's just weird. I don't know. I couldn't live like that. That would be so weird. But I guess, it's like you can't complain if it's what you want. If you're,
I kind of live for it myself.
With
well, you are. When you have like
everybody
10,
knows.
You have like 10 islands.
Everybody knows who Greg is.
Yeah.
His name and phone numbers on every bathroom wall in Rochester.
Yeah. For a really shitty time.
For a good time, call Greg.
So, speaking of drummers, we'd be very remiss. It is Ringo's birthday.
It's Ringo's birthday today.
Peace and love, baby.
Richard Starkey, his real name, his birth name, God-given name, Richard Starkey. Yeah.
Who got lucky in a way because he said he just took the Beatles gig because they were going to pay him more.
Yeah, well, he was...
And he had a drum set in the car.
Yeah, and he was extremely highly thought of in at that point in time.
He was considered Liverpool's best drummer. A lot of people like to make fun of him. There's the Jimmy Nichols nonsense.
Yeah.
Rory
Storm and the Hurricanes. He was with them and filled in with the Beatles a couple times before he even got the official gig.
Wasn't it when they were in Hamburg? Rory Storm was over there, I think, or something?
They were all there. They all took turns. The English groups were getting booked in Hamburg quite a bit, and so Rory was there. The Beatles obviously were there. They played day and night over some of these bars. They really cut their teeth in Hamburg.
And I think they deport George for a while.
George was underage. He didn't have a work permit, so they sent him back. So that kind of killed the tour.
But that's what made the Beatles, though, because they gelled as a band. Because you imagine playing all those, they'd be hoarse.
Yeah. I was in the Hamburg train station once. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Big. He was deported, huh?
Yeah, he was like
George got kicked out.
They found out he was 17. He wasn't until next February.
The Jimmy Nichols thing
is bull, but
the government was really on it back then.
Yeah. The Jimmy Nichols thing in Australia was Ringo came down with tonsillitis, I think it was.
Yeah, he had a lot of illnesses.
And so he had to cancel a few gigs. So they hired this top dog at the time was this Jimmy Nichols from Australia. And Jimmy did a bunch of shows with the Beatles, I guess, on drums. He just didn't look right, though.Is hair was... I don't know. He was an odd-looking guy.
Yeah, they dressed him up in the same outfit.
It's like going on a little tangent away from for a second. I'm still surprised the way it is these days. There's been like a movie about what Keith Moon keeled over, about the guy who took over.
Yeah.
Did anybody play the drums?
Did anybody play the drums out there? Yeah, and they finished the show with some kid in the audience.
But showing Ringo how practical he was when the Beatles broke. He was giving money to his grandma to open a hairdresser store.
Oh, is that right?
Because he figured the Beatles were going to tank in a year or two and he needed a profession.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I think he was leaning towards that, becoming a hairdresser.
I always imagine what they would have done if they didn't make it. And I think John could have been an ad man because he had all those little jingles, like a lot of his little puns and stuff. Mm-hmm. I could see the one guy, George could be a civil servant. I think he was going that way. I actually think Paul could have been like a Cliff Richards type pop guy. He'd be like the one guy.
Yeah, that's probably a good estimation. Yep.
Well, Paul came from a musical family. His mother was a big band singer. His dad played the piano. So I don't think a lot of people realize how much music training that Paul got, whether he was looking for it or not. But he was talented, man. It's like I just got through reading.
Oh, he's
reading a book by Peter Asher, who was one half of the group Peter and Gordon from the British invasion days.
Really, see Jane Asher?
And that's Jane Asher was Peter's sister, and Paul was dating Jane, and he actually moved into the Asher home and had a room upstairs on the top floor. So Peter, in this book, it's a great book. It's called The Beatles A to Zen, Z-E-N, and it's written in a different light where Peter takes each letter of the alphabet and talks about something in that era, whether it's a song, a place, a name of somebody that relates to the Beatles.
Huh,
and he died. Cool. Yeah, it's really a very interesting book.
It's funny. I was watching the Immediate Family documentary. Have you seen that?
No.
It's on Hulu. It's basically the Wrecking Crew Part 2, and it's about the 70s session guys, Lee Sklar, Russ Kunkel, and Danny Kruchmar. Mm-hmm. So they play with James Taylor and Carole King and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, in this documentary, they're all talking about Peter Asher. Oh, I met Peter Asher, and then, blah, 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 blah. And it just makes you think, well, it's supposed to be hard to get somewhere in music, but the way they made it sound in like the late 60s and early 70s, these guys, these record company guys, just helped you out.
No, you know what that reminds me of? Go back further, like back to the early 60s, the way the Stones
He helped
did.
out a lot of guys.
They just, all of a sudden, it seems so easy, like with the Stones.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's not like, well, we were on the road for 10 years. They were looking for bands because of the Beatles.
Yes.
And then they did I Want to Be Your Man, so they would scoop up all these bands.
Yeah.
You know, you look at hindsight, too, because we go back and the press would go about like 66. Well, the Beatles are past, say they're going to be passed by Dave Clark 5 and Herman's Hermits.
Right.
And then in the 70s, they had K-Tel records of the Beatles.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with Paul was sometimes you just naturally dislike the popular person, and you don't realize, you're like, whatever. Then you just go back and you start listening. You realize he's really good.
There's talent there. There's definitely talent. But at such a young age, I kid around and say they're really not human. They're from another planet. They're from Mars.
Yeah, you gotta wonder sometimes.
You're in this
really?
Bowl. None of these guys were 30 when they broke up.
No, they were in their when they broke up, yeah.
29.
They were in their early 20s.
Remember, they did break up in 69.
And then, you know, I always think about the albums and the lifespan of the Beatles, you know, not counting the Hamburg and all that stuff. 6 years. 6 years.
They'd have maybe
and they
one
did all
album out
that
now,
stuff.
one album out now. You know, if it was these days, they might have one album out.
Yeah.
I mean, from 65 to...
63.
63.
The end of 63 into the beginning of 64, right after Kennedy was shot. So February of 64 when they won.
Till 70.
Till 70.
And you remember, like,
It's
okay,
crazy.
their studio phase was basically 67 through 69.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
No, they definitely they had all the ducks were in a row. They met all the right people
It's chemistry,
at the right
you know?
at the right time between their manager Brian Epstein and Sir Martin, what's his name? Sir George Martin. They just met all the right people at the right time.
That's why I get in trouble, because I don't say it's a bad album, but Sgt. Pepper's sort of low on my thing.
Really?
You know, my view, it's not terrible. I always, you know what I do, like if I write on Facebook, you know, I always say, you know, it's just my opinion. I think that it's more a lot of George Martin's engineering wizardry. As a total, they should have had Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane on
it. Was sort of a pop together thing.
You can't say like other albums didn't have a whole set of better songs.
Magical Mystery Tour to me is
now John Lennon would say about it, yeah, I mean, it was an album, it had some good songs. Now, this is only a personal opinion. I mean, Day in the Life is great.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a reason behind that. It was all marketing with why Penny Lane.
Yeah, I know that, but Strawberry Fields might be my favorite song of theirs.
Yeah.
Would make it. But the other thing is, some people take this stuff so seriously, because I don't like that, you'll get like hate mail. It was Greg throwing his voice, wasn't he?
I used to have the mono version of Sgt. Pepper that I bought when I was in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I still had it.
I have the Apple of Abbey Road.
Oh yeah,
the Apple one.
The apple of a lot of people's eye, actually.
But my funniest story is the White Album. See, I think things out. I bought the White Album in Toronto because at the time our currency was worth a lot more, so I got it cheaper.
There you go. Always thinking.
And that's a fact. I know a lot of metal guys love the White Album.
Well, it's got some good stuff on it. I mean, it's got some stupid stuff on it. Like
they had
Mother
Revolution
Nature, Son. And
Number 9.
You don't like that?
Well, I just think there's a lot of... Okay, I got this idea, and then everything, 2 minutes is not really a tune, you know.
Number 9.
I think there's a thing like about, that's what I think they did too, is they took like a day in the life. They would be doing like Paul does it a lot of his solo stuff. They take half the song and they blend it with another song.
Yep, they did that a lot. I got an A section, you got a B section, let's go.
Because if you think about a couple of them, they don't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, Band on the Runaway.
I'll tell you what they did do, though. They made dollars and cents. They put some money in their pocket.
They got ripped off, though. That was the one thing Paul was right about. Alan Klein.
Yeah.
He was really
they were really, I mean, I've said this before on this show, but to me, they were like the template, the archetype for bands in general.
Mm-hmm.
They were young. They got discovered. They got famous. They got manipulated. They got marketed.
They did dope.
You know, they were like the pilot program for rock bands.
You know what I use them for? I use them
it.
for life a lot from my best friends, where I go like my college friends who I still know. We're like the Beatles because we were all different, but we brought something. And I think we all bring something, like if you have chemistry with friends.
I brought lunch.
Yeah. But I also think, like, Ringo is a guy, too. I like how Paul described it. He goes, you know, he wasn't, like, all nice as you think he was. He had this thing, like, you know, he was fine. But once he got to the hotel, you go up to him and he's like, sod off.
Really?
You remember he posted that thing about don't send him any more fan mail? It's like, peace, love.
Yeah, well, I guess you do get tired of it.
Peace, love, and a middle finger.
But I do think also my favorite line from Help, it's silly, but it's George, a thingy. But I think Ringo was the best actor of all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
He was a natural.
And he was a photography guy, too, so, I mean, I think he had an eye and a feel for all that stuff.
And I think Buddy Rich, I mean, I don't, you know, Rolling Stone can say what it wants, but I can imagine Buddy Rich rolling over in his grave that Ringo's ranked higher by them as a drummer.
Well, you know, what I've read a lot of things.
List or list, anyways.
Yeah, list or list, that's right.
You probably know this, Steve, but I've read a lot of things that Ringo was actually left-handed, playing
right-handed drum kit.
which I think contributes to his quirky little style and his fills and stuff.
I'll tell you what, you're absolutely right, Greg. Trying to figure out, I've said this before, I don't read, so I've got to figure everything out by ear. I'll listen to a song, especially the Beatles songs. More recently, I was working on a bunch of songs. They're quirky, man. You know, his drum fills, he leads his drum fills with his left hand.
Well, see, I realized that my own playing.
Or right hand. He switches up. It's weird.
In my own playing, I've realized, like, sometimes I'll do something and I don't quite end up right, and I'll hit, like, the cymbal on my left as a crash instead of going over to the right. And, you know, it's just become my style, too, and it got me thinking, and I started reading that stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I get it.
Yeah.
Because
I would put
you
him,
just play differently.
I would put him, too, if you close your eyes and you didn't know the song, okay, name who's playing the drums, you could tell if it was Ringo.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've listened to the songs enough over the years.
But just the style, like if you just heard the drums isolated,
right,
it would be Ringo. And I think they all brought, like, you know, like Come Together, like the guitar solo is really difficult, I guess.
Well, if you look, and here's the funny thing about Come Together, if you listen to it, and for the people that don't know, I mean, because of his left-handed, right-handed thing, if you listen to the way he does those tom things, he's going from low to high, not high to low.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it's going that way. So, you know, he's got his own little thing.
Yeah, he's invented some quirky drum fills. I mean, there's his popular
like Rain
drum fills are that's exactly what I was going to say. The song Rain, which was entirely a different feel for Ringo, because a lot of the songs he was doing up to that point were twos and fours and drum fills, you know, just a regular roll. Rain's got some interesting drum fills in it. If you listen to it,
he said that's his favorite.
That's his favorite.
And there's irony too, was when they went solo, all the other guys. If you want a Beatles reunion, it was his first album because they all play on it, not at the same time. But Ringo had the most hits at the beginning, like 5 top 10 hits.
Yeah.
And there's a story because Ringo was always sort of the nicest guy, but he quit the band for a little bit because he thought they were all mad at him. But he said like that the song "Back Off Boogaloo" might have been about Paul.
Yeah.
George plays on it.
Right.
Which is because, I mean, but there's an interesting book, if you've never seen it. I guess Ringo asked all the other Beatles to send them postcards when they went on trips. Mm-hmm. So it's the collection of all these postcards over the decades.
Okay.
You know, he always seems like if there was a reunion, he would have been the guy to say sure.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to get the other guys might have been a little difficult.
Probably George would have been the holdout.
Yeah.
George came back, I'm not sure what year it was, maybe early 90s with
Beatles reunion.
Well, no, he went on tour after being out of the music business for a little bit with Clapton's band. Clapton kind of gave him a little push to get back out playing again. So George used Clapton's band to go to Japan. There's an incredible.
And he played with Deep Purple, actually. He came out and played with Deep Purple there one show.
Who did that?
George Harrison. He used it backstage, and he came out.
And did he? I didn't know that.
They did Lucille. You could find it online.
Okay. But so George did a double live album in Japan with the whole backing band, and Clapton's on it too. But he really wasn't that warm and fuzzy about it. It was said that after it was all recorded, George just kind of like shrugged it off. It's like, yeah, okay, kind of thing.
No, and he had sort of bad because the story goes, see, all of this is rumor too. That, you hear they made up, they were friends, that he resented Paul and that. But one time he called John basically acid because he was like so venomous. But that he only did the Beatles, remember Free as a Bird, the anthology?
Mm-hmm.
He did it because his accountant or somebody stole the whole bunch of his money.
Oh, boy.
So you never know really the truth about all this stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to know.
Well, that's another thing, too. The Beatles were very good with their marketing and their handlers. You only knew what they wanted you to know, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think, it's a lot of, unless you were there and you really knew them, it's a mystery. It gets caught up in, unless you know the person.
There was a dead zone. I remember when I was a kid and I was in grammar school, there was that dead zone between 66 when they finished their last tour that they ever did and the release of Sgt. Pepper's. They were kind of like under the radar for that block of time because they were recording Sgt. Pepper. Not a lot was known what was going on. They kept it under wraps.
Yep.
They came out with that whole new look with the beards and mostly the mustache thing. George had a beard, but they came out with a whole new look, and of course now everybody's growing a mustache and a beard.
Well, that was Paul's idea to let's be somebody else.
Let's be somebody else. Yeah, what is it? What was the fictitious name? Billy Shears. Yeah. We're Billy Shears now. Billy Shears.
But I mean, imagine that. All that notoriety probably caused that. He said, "Look, you know what? I'm sick of all this Beatles stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just be somebody else and pretend we're not the Beatles."
There's always those what ifs. The last book
weird.
is by the guy who wrote the movie Stardust. He knew John well, and he said, I guess in January of 1969, George said, "Hey, we're all burned out. Let's take a break." But Paul, I guess, is such a workaholic, he just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So you wonder if they took a year off. But it's always, it's like another, we go to a parallel universe.
Yeah.
You never know how it is and everything.
I've often wondered, it's like, sure, they were together, their most popular time frame was the 7 years that you brought up earlier, Greg, and then it was over. But what about these bands today? They're celebrating 50 years. I mean,
60 for the Stones.
Yeah, I know. It's like all these years. It's like, wow, why couldn't the Beatles have done that?
I wonder
question that.
I do.
In a way, but like my good friend Caitlin said the one time when we were talking about the documentary Get Back, and she said, but what they did, everything was great, and they're like in this little thing forever.
Yeah. Well, McCartney's kind of doing that. He's taking
now and
advantage
then you think about
of the technology now for touring, and he pulls out all the stops for his sound system and the screens and the CGI and the AI and all that.
But the story I heard from this one John Lennon book, and Yoko Ono just comes up as such a really bad person. Yeah. But during 1974, he's out there. He runs into Paul, and they get along really well. And Paul goes, "I'm recording in New Orleans. You should come down." So he's talking to May Pang. I should do it, shouldn't I? I'm going to go do it. Mm-hmm. Yoko gets wind of it, calls and said, "You can't go. We have 2 weeks of headache therapy."
Yeah, well, it was a whole strange thing with Yoko when she got involved. It's like...
Yeah.
I just, from all my reading,
Can you imagine that, though?
No, and they go on, this book says, okay, Get Back, I guarantee she's going to get blasted when she passes away. All the truth will come out. They said, about those Get Back tapes, you could see tons where she's being a pest, interrupting, but all they did was show her, obviously because she had to give the rights away still.
Yeah. But her and Lindy Eastman were having some fun in a couple of the scenes.
Yeah.
It didn't look like it was a total mess.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that was a really good thing. I remember with George quit. I quit.
Yeah.
But for going to Ringo a little bit, you've been doing the car stuff. How's the car with all this stuff?
Oh, yeah. Well, I enjoy my cars. I always have. Since I was a kid,
Greg had his mint Corvette out today. He always brings over.
No, but you know what? In the 70s, I did have I can't remember the year now. It was an AMC. It was a Javelin. I actually had a 360 4-barrel Javelin when I was like 18.
That's such a good one. First cars, everybody.
Car.
First cars. Was it the Javelin? You can go.
My first car? Yeah. My first car was my mom's car. It was a 65 Ford Falcon 4-door.
Yeah, well, mine was
a 6-cylinder.
Yeah. Mine was
Remember
actually
Ramblers? Remember my Aunt Millie had a Rambler? It looked like an egg.
Yep. And the Pacer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I had the one. I had a paper. I amassed like over $1,000. I go down to a car. I was going to get, of all things, a Spider. Because I like the Spider on now.
Yeah.
Kudos to the used car guy. He calls. I go down. He goes, I can't sell this to you. It's leaking. It's bad.
Oh.
You don't imagine.
He was an honest guy.
Yeah, so he goes, I got a 73 Camaro.
Ooh.
So I got that.
Wow.
All right.
That's worth way more money.
That's all right.
You know, and the thing was, I remember I got it up the expressway to blank in case there's no statute of limitations.
Well, my poor mother, like I said, I was always a car guy. It was in my blood. I don't know where it came from, but I just love the automobile. So when I was a kid, I was building all these model cars. My father bought me a nice bookshelf. Well, I didn't put any books in there. I put all model cars on it. It was full of model cars. My mother, poor thing, when she come in the dust, she had to deal with all my model cars. So poor thing. Sorry, Mom. But in the meantime, as I got older, I started to drive. I learned how to drive on Mom's car. She had a 65 Ford Falcon. And from there, I gravitated to my next car. So how I got to that point was one day I'm home, summertime, and I hear this thunder coming down my street. And I look out the window, and it's my neighbor, one of the young guys down the street. He's driving a 1968, I believe it was, Chevy Nova Super Sport 396.
Wow.
And I went, oh, man, I want one of those, okay? So I started saving all my money, so on and so forth.
Pennies, you saved pennies, dimes.
Save my pennies, I save my dimes. And all my lawn cutting money and this money and that money. And a couple years later, I was able to afford a 1970 Chevy Nova. Of course, I wanted the Super Sport 396. Mom wouldn't let me get it. She figured I'd kill myself driving it with the big motor. Little did she know, it didn't matter what size motor was in there. I drove it like I stole it. So, I'd be drag racing on the streets. I'd be drag racing at the strip. I was just a wild and crazy guy.
Every summer, I'll think back to like when I grew up by Long Pond. And I remember, this is probably a myth, but I remember people would be dragging really late one night. But I always heard down by the lake, and there's an area, and I've always tried to find it. Last time I was at a concert, there was like an area down by the lake where you go where they call the Dead Man's Curve. Because it split away, and I'm trying. I picture there's like one thing where there's a pizza shop, and it goes this way. Where I wonder if that's it.
I don't know.
It's good old mythology, though. You always because I remember like the kids would come into Pontillo's on bridge to drag. The white lady would be like, okay, go.
We used to drag race on the what used to be called the Seabreeze Expressway, which is. What is that one now? It's 590. It's 590 now, and it's one lane. Yeah. So, but there used to be 2 lanes, so you could run one off on the Seabreeze Expressway.
Well, you remember like Long Pond before it was a wide road. It was like a country road, so you could hear like in the middle of the night like them burn. I have that memory. It's like my weird summer memory. Every year there'd be the drive-in there.
104 used to be like that.
Drag racing and stuff.
Well, there's somebody marked off a quarter mile on the Bay Bridge. Okay, you could run one off on the Bay Bridge. It's straight away, baby. Pedal to the metal, let your dual quads roar.
Yeah, but with the wind and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they didn't know.
We even had like
nobody cares. They want to run, man. They want to race.
A simple game we used to play like down by Long Pond when we were kids. We do my car, your car, and try to see who got the best car. Whatever car came by, if it was your turn, it was your car.
We should do a show on teenage car racing films.
Teenage Rebellion. I'd like to hear the story from Lou someday about the Rev on the Red Line when he wrote that song.
Cruising all night on Lake Avenue.
Cruising all night on Lake Avenue. Yeah. So I guess when he did write that, he presented it to Mick Jones, who was basically the band leader. And, of course, Mick really doesn't, in the early days, didn't understand drag racing. But Lou had this great idea, I guess, about the Rev on the Red Line story, running all night on Lake Avenue.
See,
So I'd like to hear that story someday.
The thing was, I think about cruising now, how probably boring it was, but it was fun when you were kids. You drive around, you stop to get ice cream, you hang out. But it was
10 kids in the car.
Yeah, but it was just fun. Then now I'd be bored to tears.
I ran one off on Main Street, Main and Goodman. One of the dudes from.
You ran me off. That was me.
That was you. Side by side on Main Street, and of course the cops were waiting. And they pulled my buddy. Yeah, they pulled him over. I got away, but they got him, and he got a ticket. But
you got away because you had a faster car.
I guess. I don't know.
And plus, we were like all those racing, those 50s drag movies, you said, and then all the 70s, Smokey and the Bandit and all those.
Those were good. Those were good movies.
But I do watch. I think you watch it too. I don't know if Counting Cars.
Counting Cars is.
I love watching it.
Yeah, great shows. Great shows. Those guys are talented, man. But they put together a whole car in 1 hour.
Sidekick's my favorite. The one guy, I forget his name now. Eric, is it?
I haven't seen it because I got rid of cable, so I don't see it anymore.
In an hour?
In an hour, they've rebuilt the whole car from the top to bottom.
Wow.
Yeah.
I get caught up in the colors, what color would I have for a certain car or whatever.
The magic of TV.
Yeah, right.
Alice Cooper brings in his car, the Countess. They redo it's like a Studebaker.
Yeah. I've seen, what's her name? Elvira brought in a car on Counting Cars. She brought in Las Vegas, and she brought in a car to get redone. Of course, she was in costume. Yeah. If she was out of costume, you wouldn't recognize her. She just looks like, the average lady walking down the street.
I just heard something. Her name's Cassandra or something.
Is that her name?
Peterson.
Yeah.
That's right. Cassandra Peterson.
I heard something on the radio yesterday. Some guy was doing an interview, and he was talking about the original. What was her name? Vampira. And and how they modeled so much after her. Morticia and.
No, actually, Viola stole it from Morticia.
Was the
what
cartoon
happened,
first?
Yeah, she saw the cartoon. It wasn't Morticia then. It was just.
And
how
Mrs.
they found
Adams,
her, she went to a Halloween party dressed as Morticia, and they saw her.
Okay. Only her name wasn't. It was just Mrs. Adams, I think.
Yeah, they didn't do till after.
Till the show started. Okay, I'm corrected. I should corrected. But no, it's cool though. I mean, there was this guy. It was like one of those all night. It was 5 in the morning, and this guy's talking on the radio about this stuff. But it's very interesting, because I've seen her on some TV when she had her TV show. It was some creepy stuff. Yeah,
I met Butch Patrick at the mall one day. He was just walking around.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he had he was out of costume. I don't even know what he was doing here. But aren't you Butch Patrick? He goes, yeah. What was his name? Eddie Munster. Yeah, Eddie Munster. And he had a Butthole Surfers T-shirt on at the time.
And then I love the trademark randomness of running into people here or whatever. Yeah. First thing I'd always say just to do this, what are you doing in town?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Trying to hide, but no thanks to you.
I was in Vegas one year. I was waiting for my luggage, and I'm just sitting on the edge of the chair, and I see the crowds passing by. Everybody's getting their luggage after their flight, and I see this guy walking towards me, and I said, "Man, this guy really looks familiar." I go, "Where do I know this guy from?" So he's got 2 beautiful ladies with him, one on each arm, 2 beautiful ladies. And he's walking towards me. We made eye contact, he and I. And, he got by me, smiled. I didn't know his name. I couldn't, acknowledge him, but I just gave him a little nod. Hi, how are you? And he kept walking. It turned out it was the actor and comedian Fred Travalena, if you remember Fred. He did impressions. He's an impressionist, basically.
Well,
that was his claim to fame.
Well, it's amazing that our blues song here at the Crossroads is already spanned about an hour.
We're at the Crossroads,
we can, blow through these things.
I know.
But I'll leave with the 4th of July sort of story. So I'm going to go see Rush. It's about the 4th of July, so I'm walking my dog on the canal, and a guy goes by me, and we have a great conversation. It was Geddy Lee biking.
Really?
So our grand conversation, I'd love to say, it's like, hey, come on, hang with us.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversation goes as follows. Hi, Hi.
It was like my story in
but
the
the
hallway.
weirdest part about it was like some like Rush Hour put is like some fans are like cultists and nuts. People I said that to, you bet Eddie. I mean, it counts, but all I did was say hi and he said hi. But they're like freaking out. They're like, oh, can I touch? Get the heck away from me.
I know, right?
Yeah, fandom, stardom.
Greg gets that all the time, man.
Yeah,
They're always pulling at Greg's hair.
Hey, aren't you the guy that owes me money?
You know, I saw that like with Lily Whitman when we had her on the thing about people freaking out because she's Steve's daughter.
Right.
You know, people would bring her like her dad's albums to sign.
You gotta wonder, what are you thinking?
You know, and the weird part is again, like they're doing, oh, you says that she sees me, comes over gives me a hug. You know, people, I don't know. People get, I always just see them because I'm so used to it that I just see them as people.
Yeah,
well, that's what they is. And that's what they be.
If Paul McCartney was out there, it's like, hey, get in here.
I honestly think, I hate to say it this way, but I honestly think the people that make such a big deal is because they want to feel important.
Yeah.
And
I'll leave you with a little tale like that. So there's like some random sort of drunk bothering me at Marshall Crenshaw and Dave Edmonds. So Marshall Crenshaw is at the bar, and I'm talking to him a little bit about his albums, and I go away. And then she's like, I go back, I run into her. I don't even know her, right? So Dave Edmonds, Marshall Crenshaw, he sucks. So he's right at the bar. Oh, Marshall Crenshaw!
Oh, my God, that's great. Perfect. That is perfect. There you go.
That's how it is. Yeah. But we will be returning with much more fun this month and chaos and maybe guests showing up, you know.
Well, we got Steve and Mike Murray.
Yes, Mike Murray. 40 years. We're going to learn about how somebody could start a radio show at age 1.
Wow.
But I thought
on the carnival.
This sort of is a 4th of July show, so as you saw by the funny hat and my Rocket Pop Kitty shirt, and it is sort of red, white, and blue a little bit. It's got stars.
I like that. I got a Ringo hat.
So I thought about, okay, what band could be 4th of July-ish? And I thought, well, Dave Elvin will sue us. Or X. And so I guess it's a band, my good friend, the Craftsman, some other people, the Blastoffs. Anybody remember them?
No.
But they were a fun band around here, and it's the Blastoff. It's like Rockets or stuff.
Hey,
so would anybody like to pick a song from this?
Since
well,
you're the man about town.
Well, let's see. I don't know.
Nobody got 4 songs, 5 songs on there?
I think with being...
Idiot Parade.
Idiot Parade. That's what I was going to say. Being with the carnival, that would make sense.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, Steve, for saving the day, and Greg, as always. Now, because you can't jump over Steve, go listen to your new Billy Elliot show.
And now, from the Idiot Parade, the Idiot Parade song.
Bye.
and numbers everywhere. Burning embers in the air. I won't be a climate here every day of every year.